Hey, you! Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about what happened at City Council on February 18th. And yes, I know, sometimes these meetings are super boring and it makes it hard for residents like you and I to stay informed. That's why we do this. But for today's highlights, we'll talk about walking while white as our City Council considers building more sidewalks in South Tampa. We'll also talk about East Tampa's community redevelopment area and the need to prioritize quality housing in underserved neighborhoods. We'll talk about the apprenticeship program that Councilmember Viera fought so hard for, and we'll even talk a little bit about booze. Bottoms up. Hey, you're back, or maybe you're here for the first time. Either way, my name is Megan, she, her, hers, with Tampa Bay Activist Network, and I'm so excited to be here to review the February 18th City Council meeting.
And I know you don't need a reminder, but just in case, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification button. That way you'll be able to stay up to date with everything happening in our city. And I forgot to mention, my name is Tori, she, her, hers, with the Black Electric Movement of Tampa. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, so let's take a look at what our employees were up to this week. By the way, Councilmember Goods was absent due to a death in the family, unfortunately, so that's why he won't be in.
I think before we go into what they're doing, we should uplift some important work in the community. Miss Connie Burton, a longtime activist in Tampa, came in and made a public comment that I think calls for our attention.
We are very, very concerned as the city continued to roll out a rehabilitation plan. We still have too many homes in East Tampa with blue tarps. One of the discussions in our community is that a list is created that would identify homes in East Tampa aside from a citywide list. So then the CAC can concentrate on how we can improve the quality of life in this community.
It's so critical to support community organizers that actually want to see East Tampa residents get the care that they deserve. What City Council forgets is there's actually more to Tampa other than South Tampa.
Yes, and this public comment made by Ms. Burton was important for another reason. Last Thursday, there was a community redevelopment area meeting, usually referred to as a CRA meeting.
These CRAs are important because they're one of the few ways in our democracy that people get an opportunity to decide how our City Council invests money into development. Miss Connie Burton was elected by the people of East Tampa to serve as a leader of the East Tampa CRA. It turns out Councilmember Goods, who is the chair over East Tampa, was trying to disband the East Tampa CRA and override the people. Several folks called in and made public comment at that meeting. We're not sure how it ended because we aren't able to keep watch on those meetings the same way we do, this. But we will stand for organizers on the ground anytime they need us.
Hey, I heard the People Safety Coalition is looking for new members. We're growing and we're looking for people like you, the viewers, that are ready to make a difference. You can join as yourself or as a community organization, but the goal is for us to have fun, get work done, and you get to hang out with us. I mean, what more could you ask for?
No experience required, just a commitment to growth and a desire for the radical change that we dream of.
So Ms. Connie was talking about item number 51, which is related to the Owner-Occupied Rehab Program, or the OOR. This program is important, and I'm glad she brought it up because it's a program designed to assist with essential home repairs for low-income homeowners. On top of that, this program is useful because it can help homeowners stay up to code. We encourage our viewers to check out this program with a link in the description.
That is really cool, honestly, and it looks like City Council did unanimously approve item number 51. By the way, did you hear that Darla Portman released an editorial to the Tampa Bay Times urging that politics stay out of our police department?
Who's Darla Portman? Wasn't she that actress that played Jackie Kennedy in Jackie? These are questions that I have.
No. That was Natalie Portman, but Darla Portman is actually the president of the good old Tampa Police Benevolent Association, aka the Police Union. She says she doesn't believe we should expand the powers of our Citizen Review Board. The ACLU has fought to give the review board some subpoena power, although due to the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, they still won't be able to subpoena the police officers directly. or directly discipline them. In addition, the ACLU wants the city council to have some control over who serves on the board, instead of giving the sole authority to the mayor. Considering the extreme violence TPD is able to enact on us, these reforms are minuscule and honestly don't even scratch the surface. Yet Portman seems hard-pressed to fight that, as does Mayor Jane Castor.
I wonder why a department who touts sayings like, if you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't worry, are suddenly so worried about a small inch towards transparency and accountability. It really does make you wonder, doesn't it? It's almost like they benefit from not being accountable. This is why the community wants to be refunded and the police to be defunded. Imagine if I decided I would investigate myself. How would that work? A department unaccountable to Black, Indigenous, Latinx folks, disabled folks, queer folks, and or trans folks. I'm not crying any tears for them.
You're right. I mean, one man came in to speak in opposition of ACLU's proposed changes. I hope City Council doesn't heed the word of one older cisgender white man when hundreds upon hundreds of diverse city residents demanded refunding the community last year.
Another important public comment came from another long-standing Tampa organizer in the Black community. Crunkman, as we know him, had a lot to say, and it's important we evaluate the truth of it based on our experience. He spoke about how developers and other white community leaders are often given special treatment, including motions for extra time, while oftentimes those advocating for Black lives are hardly heard. He also spoke about the horrific tragedy of the historic Black cemeteries being built over and discusses what the city council should do about it.
Compensation and relocation. Listen to me carefully, not plaques, not awards, compensation and relocation. And the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County should get ready to have compensation and relocation.
That's right, compensation and relocation. Not awards, not plaques. And we're talking to you, Councilmember Viera. Your lynching memorial efforts are ringing just a little bit hollow while Black people are dying in this city. And while death is tragic, it's beyond that. Many Black people in this city are breathing, but they're not living or thriving, not because of anything they've done, but because of the conditions imposed upon us in this city and everywhere. Our city council is culpable for this. We can and will do better. It's just a matter of when. Which side of history will this council be on? Reparations is a topic that needs discussion, and we need to have it now while we're still alive.
Later on in the meeting, Walk Bike Tampa had a presentation on accessibility, specifically for pedestrians in the Beta Bay area. Their findings were pretty thorough in pointing out the lack of sidewalks and how being able to safely navigate an area as a pedestrian is impactful to the general public. They made specific points to note that lower income people, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities are more directly impacted by the sidewalk improvements they are proposing.
This presentation was well received by members of City Council and brought to their attention that Tampa is #1 in the state for vehicle pedestrian deaths and injuries.
Very dangerous.
Walk Bike Tampa included in their presentation statistics on how areas that have a well-maintained sidewalk system in place had more economic stimulus and an increase in property value.
It should be noted that the call to action was supported by the council, but the principal focus was South Tampa, specifically the Beta Bay to McDill area. Councilmember Viera and Councilman Citro had to motion to mandate that this be focused on the whole city and not just South.
I really do hope they keep that same energy on April 22nd when the conversation regarding these proposals is scheduled to continue. I also want to point out that the City Council was very receptive to this presentation and seemingly want to apply this change, a change that our tax dollars would be happy to see. But I also want to point out that grassroots activists in the Tampa Bay area are not heard equally. Only a few white voices spoke out on this issue and were not only heard but validated by City Council. If this proposal gets passed, it is something good that will bring a positive impact to many communities. But why can't they be that receptive to other issues like defunding the police?
The council was also well praised when they passed the apprenticeship ordinance's first reading and scheduling the second reading on March 18th. This is a good thing that they've done from what we've heard, because several members of unions and individual trade workers came to speak in support of the program. While the information on the program is still limited, it looks like this might be a potential for lower income people to improve their quality of life without having to go through the college track. This is hopefully a step in the right direction. Oh, before we go, we should talk about something important. Tampa going to the Super Bowl turned out to be, not surprisingly, a major super spreader event.
Major.
We've gained national attention for, once again, being really good at being really bad at protecting vulnerable communities.
Tampa decided to be reactive instead of proactive, which I'm sure none of us are surprised about. I'm also pretty sure they're making an example of 3 bars they chose to target at this meeting. If you recall, all of Ybor and the Raymond James area, and then eventually downtown, were flooded with massless people, many from out of state. Not surprisingly, our city prioritized profit over people's safety. Despite this, 3 local businesses got summoned for a hearing for violating COVID-19 protocol.
McDinton's Irish Pub, located in Soho, was one such business. However, they claimed that they never got the notice of the hearing, so they got a continuance for March 8th. The 2 other businesses, however, did not get such a continuance. Tingra's Nightclub in Ybor and also Ybor Cigars Plus each got a suspension of their license for 3 days and a demand to come into COVID protection compliance within 90 days. You know, it really sucks because this is going to hurt their hard-working staff more than anybody else. And these tough times, every dollar counts even more than the usual. It's also sad that these small businesses chose profit over people, something, quite frankly, that they have in common with City Council.
And let's be honest, this is very much so City Council's fault, the legislators' fault, our governor's fault, the federal government's fault. We could go on. We could use our resources to send money to Tampa residents so they don't have to work dangerous jobs for low wages during a pandemic. We could subsidize small businesses so they could safely continue to pay their employees while closing their doors or severely reducing capacity. Instead, our 7 leaders, quote unquote, voted to increase the budget of the Tampa Police Department, who they themselves would not wear masks in the beginning of this pandemic.
As far as I'm concerned, Governor DeSantis, Mayor Castor, and all 7 city council leaders are culpable for the super spreader event and the culture that has led to it. They do have the power. And so do you. Join us at the People's Safety Coalition. Get involved. Call Mayor Castor every week and demand refunding the community. Call City Council and email them every week until they hear you. Oh, and you can fill out our survey, remain anonymous if you want, and tell us what you want our money spent on in the next budget coming this fall. Once again, my name is Megan, she, her, hers, with Tampa Bay Activist Network. Until next time.
And that's right, everyone. My name is Tori, she, her, hers, with the Black Collective Movement Tampa. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date. Turn on that notification button. Y'all know how it goes. Follow us on all the socials. And stay tuned for another Frontline Activist message.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angel D'Angelo, pronouns he, him. I'm a cisgender white man, blonde hair and a beard, with a burgundy shirt. I have a plant and the word laugh right behind me. I'm here today for Frontline Activist Message, and we are going to discuss some issues in our city. I'd like to introduce our activist panelists, starting with you, Mary Liz, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi everyone, Mary Liz here. My pronouns are she, her, ella. My background is tan. I am wearing a green blouse, and I am a white Latina. I will pass it on to KD.
Hello, my name is KD. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a black male or cisgender black male in his early 20s, wearing a black polo, black glasses, and a black beanie. Behind me is a large window, and I'm gonna pass it to Roselle.
What's up, everyone? Roselle here. I am a black male, Hispanic, he, him. I'm sitting in my room right now in front of my computer. It's green, and it's just a little bedroom.
All right, thank you everyone for taking some time out today for Frontline Activist Message. So this city council was quite interesting. So I wanted to talk about some topics that I think are important to not only you all as activists, but just part of this community. I thought we would start a topic that's very important: complete streets. Complete streets is when we make sure that the streets are accessible, not just for cars, but for people who are choosing to walk or use a bicycle or a scooter or other mobility device and needing a complete sidewalk. At this last city council meeting, we heard them talk a lot about building sidewalks, and thankfully it went from just being South Tampa to all of Tampa. But I would like it, if you would, to answer in a few words, why are complete streets important in your neighborhood here in Tampa, and how can they improve the quality of life for you and the people that you advocate for? If you don't mind starting that, Mary Liz.
So, I'm all for sidewalks, and I think they're extremely important for us to be able to, move about in the Tampa area. Obviously, it needs to be the entirety of Tampa and not just South Tampa, but we also need to recognize that a lot of the time sidewalks do not have tree shade. And so when people are walking to their bus stop, if that's their only form of transportation, those people are going to get extremely hot. Sometimes they can be more likely to be exposed to heat stress related illness. They could have a heat stroke. So we've got to prioritize trees alongside sidewalks.
That's a beautiful point, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's something I hadn't thought of. Roselle, what are your thoughts on complete streets in Tampa and in your neighborhood specifically?
I think it's a great idea always to increase the amount of sidewalks we have in Tampa, all of Tampa. You're making the city safer, more accessible. And speaking about bus stops, I feel like that's something that needs to be paid attention to as well on the path of a sidewalk, because just having a good bus stop in general is something that I see lacking in Tampa.
Thank you, Roselle. And Katie, what are your thoughts on complete streets and specifically the sidewalk issue in your part of Tampa?
I just want to say I didn't think of trees when I thought of sidewalks. So I thank Mary Liz for bringing that point to a head. And then I like the idea of complete streets, but I agree that it should be for all of Tampa. More specifically, where I am, in my particular part of town, there's actually no sidewalk from like the main street to like my side road. There's no long sidewalk where the bus stop is. And where I live, that road is actually prone to hitting pedestrians. There's a lot of reports of people who have been going to the bus stop or coming home from the bus stop being hit by cars because there's no sidewalk on the side of the road.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. And, we learned at City Council that Tampa is one of the highest, if not the highest in Florida for pedestrian related deaths. So it's so important. But speaking of safety, we also have to talk about kind of the elephant in the room, for lack of a better cliche. The SuperSpreader event that happened on February 7th, the Super Bowl, has made national attention to once again show how poorly Tampa takes care of its most vulnerable residents. What do you all think, from your standpoint as a resident of the city of Tampa and as a community organizer, what do you all think our city council could have done to prevent the SuperSpreader event versus what they have chosen to do, which is to react to it? Mary Liz, if you don't mind kicking that off.
I definitely think the masks should have been, the top priority. And, we also saw a lot of kind of quote unquote, some people would say a little bit of a chaos downtown. I think we saw a bit of chaos in Ybor, people like swinging on trees. And the reaction from TPD was really different than the reaction to, Black Lives Matter movement and the amount of people that showed up to the Super Bowl. I mean, imagine if we had this many people show up for Black Lives. Like, we would just have an incredible, movement, and we'd have incredible power. And I think specifically with the businesses, we've needed COVID stimulus relief. That's really what it comes down to. We've really needed small business to be prioritized instead of large corporations. People are willing to put their life on the line just so they can, make a paycheck. People don't get paid leave. This is really common all across America, not just in Tampa. And so I think, with the three businesses that did that, I think they saw this opportunity to maximize profit, as you've said, and they kind of, put their workers and, their community on the line just so they could make that short-term economic gain. And we really should have seen, stronger mandates when it came to masks. It's sad to see that happened, and we're definitely going in the next few weeks. I'm sure we've already seen increases in cases. We're definitely going to be feeling it. And people from not just Tampa came here. Like, it was, potentially other states, maybe, people from other country we don't know. So it's just, we needed to take better precautions, and we didn't.
It really amazed me how many people actually came to the Super Bowl. I remember seeing the amount of people that was actually allowed to go to the stadium. I believe it was like 20,000 people. And then they're like, oh yeah, but 7,500 is medical professionals that have been vaccinated. It's like, okay, so to reward medical professionals for their almost a year of dealing with COVID, you're going to put them in a stadium with people that may or may not have COVID. There's definitely people not wearing masks. And then the duality between people and how they reacted after Tampa Bay won versus when we're protesting in the streets for Black Lives Matter. None of that would have been allowed. But I mean, that's expected, right? We hear all the time how people riot or destruct property after games. We've seen that after the hockey team won. They're down in Sparkle Wharf, destructing property or whatever. So this is not something new. And then I agree that there definitely could have been more measures to be proactive. I personally feel like that the Super Bowl being in Tampa was definitely a great thing in terms of getting attention to the city, whatever that looks like, money to the city. But I'm pretty sure that a lot of the funds that were raised that weekend weren't going to be given back to the community where it's really needed. So something that I think that should have been proposed is blocking city streets to not allow, like, if you're gonna have officers, at least to make them be useful. So block the city streets, allow a certain minimum or maximum people in the city streets. I have friends that went to Ybor and were saying how like they had to leave Ybor because it was like there was no walking room. You're literally brushing shoulders with people. And this is still within a global pandemic, right? Many the residents of Hillsborough County haven't even gotten vaccines yet. Even if a vaccine, that does not mean you're immune, right? You can still get COVID even though you have a vaccine. The vaccine is only limiting how bad or how severe COVID is or affects your body. And that's also a misconception. People think that because you're vaccinated, you're just immune. That's not the case.
For me, the celebration, the aftermath of the Super Bowl was where it was like most apparent that all care went out the window for the city of Tampa. Like, there was an exception made by everyone, basically. It was like, we're just going to party. We won. That's it. So, like, I think what's very strange is, like, I believe the mayor even had an executive order for masks to kind of just be a mandatory thing. And that just went straight out the window, even with the mayor just like partaking in the celebration herself, kind of just like turning a blind eye to things. There's no real consistency when it comes to like bringing down the hammer and like laying down the law, as they would say. I think the city already just wrote it off. It was like, this was just going to be a celebration and they could give a damn about a mask.
I think those are such pertinent points with everything we have going on. So the next question is something I think all of us are very passionate about with our work. Last year, despite the demands of hundreds of multicultural Tampa residents to defund the police and refund the community, our city elected officials all voted unanimously to give them an additional $13 million on top of their previous year's budget. Despite that, the very minuscule ask that the ACLU has made to make the Tampa Police Department even just a sliver more accountable with the Citizen Review Board is so controversial, so much so that PBA President Darla Portman has written a scathing review about the city council, saying that they're politicizing police accountability, for lack of better words. Now, of course, I have very long history of controversial opinions regarding Tampa Police Department. But I would really like to hear from you, especially, all of you, of course, but Rozelle, I know this is something that you worked with very closely last year, was mechanisms of accountability. What are your thoughts on the PBA's decision to act as though a small inch of accountability is essentially the most radical meltdown Tampa has ever seen? How do you feel about their reaction, and how do you feel about the lack of accountability in TPD in general?
It's definitely an overreaction. When you think of the city council, they should not be loyal to any one group, any one organization. It's just for the people, and they're elected officials by the people. And that is everyone in total. And when it comes to the PBA stance, it just seems like they show up only whenever the odds are against it. But whenever things are looking like they're being challenged, then they have to come. And now they're all of a sudden they're speaking up and speaking out. I just think whenever their number is called, they just come with the same excuse that like, this is unconstitutional and this is not right and all this stuff. And there's no real evidence for that. They're asking for a CRB that actually has teeth, that actually has power to subpoena. And that's like something that everyone should want, because CRB is neutral and it should really look at these cases, whatever is brought to them, and say what went wrong, if anything went wrong. It isn't an attack on the police. It isn't singling out the police. It's just holding people accountable and making sure the right thing happens, like justice is served. Overall, the people want transparency and they want accountability. And the only way you can get that is with a neutral and just system.
That's true. And Katie, did you have some thoughts on the recent PBA and CRB issue?
Yeah, I always ask, what is the bad thing about accountability, right? Like, what is the bad thing about oversight, right? I don't really understand why, I don't even want to say like police officers, but even police officers, and I would say police officer adjacents, like the people who are like just so proud of police officers or whatever. Like, I don't understand what is the problem with oversight and accountability. There's so much pushback from accountability, and I don't really understand. Most businesses have audits, whether through your company or an outside company. So I don't understand like what's so wrong about making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And my only thing is that you know you're not, or you know that somebody isn't, right? And there is power when there's somebody within your organization that may not be always dotting their I's or always crossing their T's, but you have oversight over that, right? You know that X, Y, and Z isn't always perfect, but because you're the only one that can really like oversee that, that's fine, because you can decide when not to check them. But if you have somebody out that's neutral, they're gonna either make sure you check them or they're going to remove you for not checking them, right? With this PBA thing, I don't understand why like there's so much pushback saying that, you know, you're bringing politics into policing. Let's be realistic. Everything is political, right? Whether you like it or not, a lot of this is political. It's kind of like when people say, oh, like, why are you always bringing blackness into this? Because a lot of this is anti-black. A lot of these systems are anti-black. They're anti-everything. There's a lot of isms. There's a lot of phobias that have wrapped into this white supremacist world. And it's like, at the end of the day, you're either going to acknowledge it and work towards dismantling it, or you're going to keep being blind and allow people to keep getting hurt, right? And this is what's happening. And I agree with Rozelle. These same people aren't showing up to nothing else unless it concerns the police, in terms of it's making the police look bad. It's like, if you're really for the community, where are you at over anything? You need to be here when the police is doing great and when the police isn't doing anything. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really care for the police, because I feel like there's nothing that the police do that we can't do ourselves, right? In my opinion, police don't protect people. Like, people protect people. I just don't understand. That's my whole gripe with this, is what's the pushback with accountability? And if you want to hold yourself accountable, well, you're not obviously doing that correctly. There's so many people that's like police adjacent that has so much to say. And it's just like so crazy to me, because I don't know, maybe I'm new to this, because like I feel like people were not as adamant to be advocates for police until like recently. I don't know if police ever had like this much support, but I feel like the support for law enforcement came within like the last year. I don't remember Back to Blue back in the day when I was in like high school or middle school. I don't remember these organizations. So it's kind of crazy how like they're coming out of the woodworks, and it's just like, where have you been? Because a lot of these organizations that are advocating for accountability, or even for not policing or alternatives to policing, have been around for years, preaching the same thing. You have people talking about years of lack of accountability, years of lack of oversight. Who are you to denounce years of problems? And then you bring up a problem, but you don't bring up a solution. If you don't want accountability, well, what do you want? Where can we compromise on this, right? There's no communication with these people. There's like, all right, cool, we don't want that. Okay, well, what would you have instead, right? There's nothing. So it's like, you clearly don't want to have a discussion. You're clearly not trying to meet in the middle.
And to your point, I mean, RJC has been doing this work for at least 4 years, and there's always been police supporters, but you're right, they were never organized in this way. And I think their organization is a sign that we might be winning, Mary Liz, you want to bring that home?
Absolutely. Katie and Roselle, you brought up some really, really great points. And really with the Citizens Review Board, I think it was intended to, really put TPD in check and really ensure that voices were heard and that action was starting to happen. But right now it just feels like the Citizens Review Board is kind of a facade, it just feels like it's not fulfilling its purpose. It seems like there's some limitations as to what the people can do. I think the Citizens Review Board just needs to be improved as to what the initial roles are and how far they can go, because if it's not going to really make any difference in being able to hold police officers accountable when they've done something wrong, then maybe it needs to be disbanded. If it's not serving its purpose, then what are we going to do? Like we need a Citizens Review Board that is taken seriously and promotes justice. I feel that the Citizens Review Board needs to be relooked at and definitely approved upon as far as like what level of power they have. Otherwise, it's not fulfilling its purpose.
Thank you all so much for this insight and for informing the viewers. Katie, did you have a point you wanted to make?
I wanted to add onto that because I agree. So from my understanding, the Citizen Review Board is allowed to review cases after the police or so from my understanding, the Citizen Review Board is allowed to review cases after the police or internal affairs already have reviewed and made a decision. So it's like I've always had like a misunderstanding of that, because it's just like, all right, cool. So there's obviously some discrepancy because I had to get involved, right? So you obviously know that something happened. They only get involved when there's like misconduct or something like that. So you're allowing them to conduct their own investigation, make rule on that investigation, and then close the case, and then you can finally review it. So it's like, after all that's done, if that's the case or how it's done, what purpose do you serve? You're reviewing documents that has already been, in a sense, complete. How I think of it, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I need to look more into it, is if there's a court case going on and then the jurors come in and they and the judge announce if the person is guilty or not guilty, and then you just get a rundown of that. And then you also voice, oh, well, this should have been this or this should have been that. But you can't really do nothing because the case is already closed. It isn't like you can reopen it, right? I agree with Mary Elizabeth. Like, there's definitely needs to be more oversight or more powers to them. And I think that the subpoena powers is a great addition to that, or at least moving in that direction, because if you're just reviewing cases that's already been closed, like, what purpose do you serve? And I agree. If you serve no purpose, you're just there for face, right? And we don't need nobody for face. We need people that's actually doing work. If you're not doing work, then I agree with Mary Elizabeth. Then just don't be there, because you're just taking up space and you're providing a facade to people that think that you're really working for them, but you're not.
Exactly. Damn, that's so true. I remember when it was formed by Bob Buckhorn back in 2015, and it was always designed to be the facade that it is. So we're not trying to fix it. We're trying to break it, because it's doing what it was intended to do, which was nothing. We are out of time. So I do want to thank our three panelists here. We're going to sign out here. Again, my name is Angel D'Angelo. Defund the police, refund the community. I'm with Restorative Justice Coalition, pronouns he, him. If everyone just wants to say your name one last time for our viewers.
Mary Liz, thank you all.
All right, y'all. You have a good one. This is Katie signing out. Thank you.
Roselle, peace, y'all.